Story 1. Some of it is due to the owners viewing the Chihuahua puppies with an overly positive perspective, admiring their tiny teeth and adorable barks. However, they often do not correct undesirable behaviors, allowing the cute puppy to grow into a biting, irritable adult dog that barks at everything. Additionally, some issues arise from poor breeding and neglect. Story 2. It is their only defense. Mine is well trained, but when large dogs run up and surprise her, she barks a lot. Let's face it, almost every dog is bigger than she is. She knows her size isn't enough to scare them off, so she goes straight for her primal response. Story 3. Chihuahuas and other smaller dogs are known as sounding dogs. They have been selectively bred to be small enough to fit close to a person, such as in their sleeves or on their lap. While close to their owner, their job is to alert people around them that a stranger or unrecognized person has approached and to be a nuisance until help can arrive. Some small dogs are also used to attract fleas away from people. For hundreds of years, Chihuahuas have been utilized to protect loved ones from intruders and other dangers. These instincts to bond closely with one person and defend them can cause friction in modern life since they are often exposed to strangers. They need firm but fair training to know when it's appropriate to act, and sadly, not many people invest the time to do so. Many erroneously believe that because a dog is small, it cannot cause damage. Small dogs can and have inflicted serious injuries if left unchecked, as well as put themselves in serious danger. They have no concept of self-preservation. All they care about is protecting their owner at all costs. Many small dog breeds that people see are poorly trained and socialized, and it's not their fault. I have seen trained Chihuahuas, and they will fight for their owner if they believe it will save their life. They are great dogs, but challenging for someone unwilling to put in the work necessary for such a headstrong and fearless breed. Story 4. They are most often traumatized by being treated like a stuffed toy. Chihuahuas are not bred as heavily as people assume. In fact, their behavior is quite close to that of wild dogs compared to other breeds often considered cute. Imagine living with overbearing grandparents who constantly want to hug and kiss you, even if you tell them no. Now imagine they are 10 times your size and multiple times stronger than you. They control every aspect of your life, are around you all the time, and they do not understand what you say or do not care. This is the average life of a Chihuahua. Story 5. Chihuahuas suffer from a twofold problem: overbreeding and undertraining. The difference in shape and temperament of a Chihuahua from a responsible breeder compared to a pet store can be remarkable. This is especially evident in the size and shape of the skull. It's important to remember that temperament is partially genetic, and puppy mills and backyard breeders do not care about this. They produce the tiniest teacup Chihuahuas at high volume, with no regard for the health of the animals they raise. The second issue is training, or rather the lack of it. Chihuahuas tend to bite more than any other dog breed. Why is this? Because people think it's cute. When you raise a puppy, your responsibility is to provide that dog with safety, security, socialization, and love. Many people get small dogs and fail to give them the security they need because these tiny creatures are treated like toys. If a large breed puppy growled due to feeling nervous, people typically understand to back off and give him space. However, how many videos have you seen online of people intentionally provoking a growling Chihuahua and laughing? Story 6. That's because they never went to therapy to work through their childhood trauma, and now we see the results. Story 7. Small dogs are often mismanaged because their owners believe their behavior is cute. Since they are not large enough to cause serious damage, no one bothers to train them. Story 8. Chihuahuas are actually quite intelligent, which makes their situational awareness contribute to their readiness to confront challenges. They inhabit a world filled with self-centered individuals. Story 9. I have a theory that no dog knows how big they are. In their own minds, dogs are all the same size, even though visibly they clearly are not. Small dogs learn from an early age to compensate for the lack of respect they receive by being excessively dominant and aggressive. A less esoteric approach: owners of large dogs are required by law or decency to train restraint into their pets. You can't have a British Mastiff behaving aggressively. Small dog owners, not just those with Chihuahuas, often prefer not to train, and instead hold their dogs back or pick them up if situations become too intense. This adds to the dog's frustration, rewards aggressive behavior, and shields them from any consequences. It's the same with people who exhibit assertiveness and entitlement. They behave this way because they believe they are shielded from facing repercussions. Story 10. As a Chihuahua owner and dog trainer, I believe the main issue is that the world is vast and they are small. It is much easier to be scared when you are diminutive, and people often overlook their warning signs. This means a Chihuahua must express themselves more vocally than other dogs, such as through snapping or growling, to be taken seriously. I genuinely believe that a well-treated Chihuahua is one of the sweetest dogs, especially when they trust you and feel safe. Furthermore, the most poorly behaved Chihuahuas I have encountered were usually the result of bad breeding and owners who lacked knowledge about their care needs. Story 11. Chihuahuas were originally bred to wriggle under Mexican houses and kill rattlesnakes. They are the result of a successful attempt to put the most aggression into the smallest dog body possible. Story 12. I think they are poorly socialized, as any other dog could hurt them just by playing, so owners keep them away. Additionally, people treat them as toys instead of real dogs because they cannot do any damage. Story 13. They are small animals living in a vast world. They must be vigilant to avoid being stepped on by people. They are the sweetest puppies ever. Story 14. I have a Chiweenie. Both Chihuahuas and Dachshunds can be challenging, but put them together, and they turn into the sweetest little dogs. Story 15. They are afraid of everything because they are small and weak. Others often overstep their boundaries, trying to handle them and interfere with their lives. Additionally, they typically do not receive training from puppyhood, as they are often treated as accessories. In an effort to compensate for their fear and lack of control, they behave as loudly and aggressively as possible. It is effective, so they continue this behavior. Story 16. In my opinion, it is because neglectful and abusive owners antagonize their small dogs thinking it is funny. They also do not properly socialize or train the dogs. This occurs frequently with small dogs. People treat them as toys or objects, rather than living beings that need training, love, and respect. It is unacceptable. Properly trained and socialized Chihuahuas usually do not exhibit these behaviors. Are there behavioral outliers? Yes, it is possible. However, I believe it is primarily due to the emotional abuse inflicted on small dogs by their owners. Story 17. Mine is atypical. She will give an introductory bark or two, but after that, she wants you to hold her, proclaim your undying allegiance, and give her some treats. Story 18. My dog is very friendly and sociable. He loves people and gets extremely excited at the vet. He is the friendliest dog I have ever been blessed with. He does not get those traits from me. Story 19. My sister just got a Chihuahua, and a friend has one as well. These Chihuahuas are the sweetest dogs. Now, my neighbor across the street has two. Story 20. Weird. My Chihuahua is not a mischievous gremlin since he is the sweetest little dog there is. He would rather play with others than attack them, that's for sure. My Shih Tzu, though, is another story. He gives me a hard time correcting his behavior because everything he does, my wife and daughter find adorable. Story 21. Maybe I have just been around well-trained Chihuahuas, but I have constantly heard that they are mean and neurotic, although I have only ever met very sweet and friendly ones. I will say that most of the ones I have met are long-haired Chihuahuas. Don't they have something else mixed in to get the hair like that? Story 22. I don't understand why people think this. My Chihuahua is the most social dog I have met. She loves people, especially tall individuals who will pick her up. I have a friend who is 6 feet 6 inches tall, and he just carries her around. She is very happy about it. Story 23. They are companion breeds and are not meant to be aggressive. People often see a small dog and disregard their boundaries. This behavior can also stem from a lack of training and improper breeding. Regardless of the reason, Chihuahuas are not supposed to behave that way. Story 24. When my wife and I first got married, we inherited her grandmother's Chihuahua when her grandmother moved to Florida. He lived with us for a couple of years. Every time someone came to the house, he would growl, bark, and try to bite their ankles. He slept on our bed, and if we accidentally nudged him, he would growl and nip at our feet. He was quite difficult to manage at all times. Fast forward about 8 years later. Her grandmother was back from Florida and living with family. The Chihuahua was old but was reunited with her. We came to visit, and his personality had entirely changed. He did not bark at anyone, there was no biting, and he actually cuddled up to us. I think it was partly due to senility and happiness at being back with his owner. Story 25. I have 2 Chihuahuas. Their behavior mostly depends on how they were raised. The older one has been with me since she was a puppy and is one of the calmest Chihuahuas I have ever had. Sometimes I think she forgets that she is a Chihuahua because she is very friendly. She barks at strangers but calms down when she realizes they are friendly. My other Chihuahua was a rescue after being abandoned by her previous owner. She was used as a breeder. When I got her, she exhibited some forms of aggression due to trauma. It took time, but she eventually calmed down and started to understand that not all families will allow abuse. She still has issues with strangers, but I help her adjust to meeting new people. She even reminds the older Chihuahua that she is, in fact, a Chihuahua. Story 26. It is easy to avoid training your dog when you can simply pick it up or move it out of the way with a nudge. There are certainly breed tendencies regarding barking and overall temperament, but many Chihuahua owners do not train their dogs. Owners of larger breeds typically invest effort into instilling behaviors since an untrained big dog can become a major issue. Story 27. I love dogs. Big dogs, small dogs, medium-sized dogs, purebreds, and mutts, male and female. That said, I've never met a Chihuahua that wasn't a basket case. Everyone I've been around either wanted to bite everyone, was afraid of everyone, or vacillated between the two constantly. If they weren't 2 pounds, we'd all be dead by now. I'm sure of it. Story 28. I once had a Chihuahua mix who hid under a table, and when I tried to coax him out, he bit me on the lip. They can be vicious little dogs, and he was actually my favorite of all the dogs I have ever had. Story 29. They were bred to be small and aggressive because their original purpose was to kill rats. They would not eat them. Instead, they would chase them into a hole and eliminate them all. Story 30. It depends on the dog and the person. Being small can make them vulnerable to getting hurt. Being loud and trying to look intimidating helps them achieve their goals, especially with other dogs and less observant people. However, as someone who raised a Chihuahua from puppyhood until her passing at 17 years old, I believe you can teach a Chihuahua not to bite as a way to solve problems. She was the sweetest little companion. I miss her dearly, but as they say, small dog, huge personality. Story 31. It's their defense mechanism. They're tiny, so they have to act big and scary to fend off any threats. Chihuahuas are amusing too because I've met many of them that attached themselves to one person but did not like anyone else. My grandfather had one about 20 years ago. That dog would have died for him, but it wouldn't let anyone else near my grandfather if the dog was sitting on his lap. Story 32. I always assumed that large dogs with poor temperaments were euthanized and not permitted to breed throughout the course of human domestication, whereas small dogs with aggressive temperaments were considered less dangerous and allowed to live. That is just my personal theory. Story 33. Being small enough that everything can crush or eat you leads you down one of 2 paths: fear or aggression. Story 34. Why small dog syndrome exists. A dog behaviorist's perspective. Small dog syndrome refers to a set of undesirable behaviors often seen in small dogs, such as excessive barking, aggression, and possessiveness. However, the root cause is not the dog's size but rather how humans treat small dogs differently from larger dogs. This phenomenon is primarily driven by human behavior, training inconsistencies, and unintentional reinforcement of bad habits. Story 35. Many small dogs are frightened because every creature around them appears to be a giant and could easily crush them. Story 36. People treat Chihuahuas as anything but dogs and then act surprised when they behave badly. If you want a well-behaved Chihuahua, do not treat it like a 5-pound accessory. Treat it the same way you would treat any other dog and hold it to the same expectations. Story 37. Once I saw a Chihuahua barking at a group of people with their dogs. A standard poodle, a shepherd of some kind, and a Rhodesian Ridgeback. The Chihuahua was straining on its leash, eager to attack. I remember the dogs mostly ignoring it, but the Ridgeback turned and looked at it with a mixture of confusion and pity. The owner of the Chihuahua was embarrassed by its behavior, but honestly, what do you expect from that breed? Story 38. They were selectively bred to fight and kill rats, which are not much smaller than they are. It is a rat-sized dog that was once used to combat plague-infested rats and is now forced to live in a purse. They still have a lot of energy that needs to be released somewhere. Story 39. The real answer is that people often do not properly train small dogs because they believe a small dog cannot cause significant damage. In reality, they can. Dogs also have boundaries that humans tend to ignore. Story 40. It's a cyclical problem. Because they are so tiny, no one thinks they are that threatening, so no one corrects or controls their aggression. Story 41. If you were a wolf that had thousands of years to evolve and improve, only to end up as a Chihuahua, you would be angry too. Story 42. It is the result of generations of inbreeding that created this type of dog. Their eyes are literally bulging out of their heads. We did this to them and they are aware of it. Story 43. All the aggression of a pit bull in the body of a cat, combined with the fact that they are too harmless to do anything, leads people not to bother training them. Story 44. They are typically the size of a common house cat or smaller. It is a little guy syndrome, basically macho posturing due to the lack of physical intimidation. Someone in my wife's family had a Chihuahua named Chino, short for Pacino, who was all about squaring up, acting tough, and thinking that he was 3 times bigger than he was. As he got to know you, though, he chilled out. I imagine that they are constantly on the defensive because they know that they could be punted over a fence without a second thought by even the weakest of men. Story 45. We took majestic wolves and transformed them into an abomination against God, and our dreadful creation has never forgiven humanity for this sin. Story 46. Remember when Zeus created centaurs because he was attracted to a horse? That's what Satan did to a dog. Story 47. They are significantly inbred, and increased inbreeding coefficients lead to heightened aggression and abnormal behavior, even in humans, particularly in humans. Story 48. I have a theory that the smaller the dog, the bigger they think they are. In their mind, being big means being dangerous. They all come with the same amount of energy. Smaller dogs need less to keep their bodies functioning, so they use it all to bark loudly throughout the day. Story 49. Most dogs love people. Even giant, aggressive junkyard dogs go home and turn into a ball of mush for their owners. Chihuahuas just want the world to burn for daring to put them in a body smaller than the average house cat. Story 50. Well, let's look at it this way. Think about how much inbreeding it takes to get from a wolf to a Chihuahua over some generations. Are you still wondering why they behave strangely? Story 51. I dislike small, yappy dogs. I own 2 adopted pit bulls, and they react poorly when another dog stares at them, especially if the other dog behaves like a Chihuahua. It feels like a serious situation. We have taken them to dog training, but at this point, they are not fixable and have nothing but love for humans. I have never owned pit bulls before. They are by far the most loving dogs I have ever had, although they can be a handful. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.